Welcome everyone to the very first Serverless Days Warsaw event. It's great to see how fast the serverless community has grown and how many talented and passionate software developers we have out there. These Serverless Days events are an incredible way to meet developers and the community and share what you've built and also get any questions answered. Thanks so much for joining us today at this inaugural event. There's an amazing lineup of speakers and it's going to be an epic opportunity for learning and for meeting new friends. Today I'd like to share with you how quickly serverless has grown and talk about why enterprises are adopting serverless so quickly. My name is James Beswick. I'm a senior developer advocate here at AWS Serverless. Prior to being a DA, I was a product manager and a software developer for a long time. And I've also been a self-confessed serverless geek. I've built fairly large-scale serverless solutions for the last 3 years using only serverless technology. Previously, I worked for companies like USAA and Rackspace. And the most important thing on this slide is my email address and my Twitter handle. So if you ever have any questions about serverless, feel free to reach out to me. So it wasn't long ago that Lambda was launched and serverless was a new concept. And when you think about how many customers are running AWS Lambda today, it's kind of astonishing. And one of the main reasons for the success is the sheer simplicity of deploying highly scalable, secure applications. Now, do you remember Hello World, the one-line program that's the rite of passage for developers? Imagine a simple Hello World application, but for an enterprise. In a dev test environment, this is what it looks like. Look at the stack. You have an actual server or an instance like EC2, and an operating system, maybe Windows or Linux or whatever you prefer, then your choice of runtime, and then a web server. And all of these things need patching and maintaining and feeding and watering. But look at the code. The business logic is just one line. The rest is all overhead. Now for enterprises, it's much more complex due to high availability requirements and scaling. If you zoom out to run in production Hello World at scale, imagine that application, you'll need multiple servers for availability in different geographical areas. You'll also need security groups configured and VPCs, and you probably need an image of the stack so you can deploy more servers. So you have to then manage the image for that server as well. And if your demand grows, you'll then have to scale to more than 3 servers. You probably need auto-scaling groups to manage that. But also, if Hello World at scale is not a huge success as I expect it to be, then I still need more than one server due to high availability requirements. And so I have a server sitting around not doing very much. Now, the logic here, of course, is still just this core logic of one line of code. And the serverless approach helps developers focus back on the actual code that they care about. Now, if you look at how this would work as a serverless application, it looks more like this. This is how we would do it serverlessly. You have one Lambda function that contains your single one line of code, our hello world, and then we put an API gateway in front of that, and then that's it. And this simple example is massively scalable out of the box. It's also highly available out of the box, and it's secure. It can only be called by that one endpoint using granular permissions using IAM. And even this simple setup like this is able to take millions of requests per day. Now, all of the things that enterprises have to consider when launching any traditional app at scale, all of these things, most of the time we don't have to think about with serverless. And it's a really long list of tasks that you or someone else in your team would typically have to manage. And so it's about your business logic and not about the infrastructure. And this is the key to why serverless is so different. You focus on the business logic and not the machinery that's underneath it. And it's one of the reasons that Lambda now has hundreds of thousands of active developers every week. It also has trillions of invocations every month. And today, the list of serverless first enterprises is accelerating. Lambda continues to grow in well-established brands, and these companies demand dependable, predictable performance. But it's also growing with individual developers who need a simple to start, easy to operate way of innovating. Now, after seeing all of these enterprises adopt serverless as a primary method of application delivery, I had to ask why. What are the benefits that they're seeing? Why is this approach so compelling? So in talking to enterprise customers, we repeatedly hear that they choose serverless first for 5 main reasons. The number one thing we hear from enterprise customers is time to market. Edmund said what took us just a few days to build using a serverless solution based on AWS Lambda would have taken 6 months to build from scratch. Now, many customers work in environments where delivery cycles are getting shorter, and the days of 2-year waterfall cycles have really all but disappeared. And many development groups are now expected to ship quickly with uncertain requirements at the outset. So when you look at how the serverless model fits this need, it's almost purpose-built to help accelerate application delivery. There's no infrastructure management, there's no networks, no computers, no operating systems to patch. There's also less code with more reusable functions. Many production serverless applications have 50 to 70% less code than server-based equivalents. And with the removal of boilerplate code, that means you have less code, and if you believe that code is a liability like I do, this is a good thing. Less code is easier to test. And a well-architected serverless app also has many functions, which helps make code reuse very simple when you start to have more projects. It also frees developers to work on features. This puts your developers closer to your customers and helps promote iteration, where developers can work on features, give those to your customers, receive feedback, and continue to iterate. And this tends to result in higher quality software that's more useful for your customers. And then there's a full suite of managed services that's another major driver in rapid delivery. Serverless is all about services. Now, many people who are new to serverless think that it's synonymous with Lambda. But Lambda is only the functions as a service offering that runs your code on demand. And most of the time it will be the glue between different services. Using the services is the key to achieving the most benefits of serverless. We rely upon services like API Gateway to provide an interface into our applications, or DynamoDB for very low latency, web scale, NoSQL storage for our apps. There's also S3 that we use for durable long-term storage of user data, for example. And for very complex workflows, we can orchestrate these easily with step functions. Events, queues, and notifications are also important in managing data across applications. And there are specialized services too, designed to serve certain use cases. So there's Kinesis for real-time ingestion of data, or IoT if you need to interact with the Internet of Things. And also Elastic Transcoder that you can use for processing large media files. Now, Lambda can also connect with almost anything within AWS, which means you have the full access to the power of machine learning, or IoT, or analytics, or media processing, or web, mobile, and digital services. These services are all tools in your serverless developer toolbox. So you want to mix and match these to help solve your problems and build applications. The key to remember is that these are all pay-as-you-go services. So whether you use an enterprise-grade database like Aurora Serverless, or a petabyte-scale data stream ingestion service like Kinesis, it makes it very easy to experiment without any long-term commitment. So when you combine the services, you get applications that look more like this. There's more Lambda functions here, they're more specific, and they're shorter lived. And there's benefits to this type of infrastructure. First, you can see there's parallelization. The applications can do more things at once. It's easy to add functionality by branching off and adding more Lambda functions and other services to perform separate tasks. Functions are also highly specialized and reusable. The functions are doing one thing and can be moved into projects on other projects more easily. And this design is also very resilient and highly scalable. So the second thing we hear from customers very frequently is that they like the availability of serverless. Custom Inc. said that they had reduced their cost by a factor of 90%, but also that increased service reliability, and the operations team could focus on other areas since they no longer needed to constantly manage the service. Now you'll hear people at AWS say that everything fails all the time. This is a quote from our CTO, Werner Vogels. So AWS designs everything to anticipate failure, and we design architecture to provide resiliency. Now, since the start of AWS, availability has been a top priority. AWS has 24 regions and 77 availability zones, and we've announced plans for another 3 regions coming soon. So many services offer HA out of the box. So Lambda load balances across different availability zones. So in the event of a service disruption, your functions run in another availability zone without any intervention. Many services in the serverless portfolio, services like API Gateway, DynamoDB, or S3, also run in multi-AZ environments, and they're highly scalable and highly available too. Lambda functions have multiple levers and controls for retry logic and error handling. This means you can embed good practices at the architecture level and not in custom code. We have a fairly new feature called Lambda Event Destinations, for example, which can also help you reduce custom code in working with error handling. Many of the design patterns we have are therefore resiliency. They emphasize retry logic, queues, and asynchronous approaches. There are other tried and tested patterns of distributed computing that improve the availability and resiliency of applications. And some of these are actually very simple to implement, but they have a massive impact on the availability of your workload. For example, with web apps, if you have a single page application web app, you can use CloudFront and Route 53, hosting the application on S3 to deliver your application to millions of users very easily, giving you highly available access. You can also use Amplify Console to automate a lot of the process of pushing those applications to your customers. Serverless applications also tend to be easier to provide multi-region than traditional applications. Now, single region applications can be highly available, but if you want to design for even higher levels of availability, you can go multi-region. Now, at the data level, this is supported by services like S3 through bucket replication, and it allows automatic asynchronous copying of objects across Amazon S3 buckets. There's also DynamoDB global tables, and that eliminates the difficult work of replicating data between regions and resolving update conflicts, and that enables you to focus on building your application business logic. At the compute level, you can deploy Lambda in multiple regions, and you can also deploy API Gateway endpoints at the regional level too. And don't forget you have Lambda at Edge available too to run compute at any one of our 216 CloudFront points of presence. The next thing we hear about is performance. Square Enix said that AWS Lambda had a striking effect. Image processing that used to take several hours was finished in as little over 10 seconds. So performance is an important reason why customers choose serverless. Continuous improvement is a major part of how performance continues to get better. AWS services are built using the same building blocks that customers use. As there are improvements in speed and performance and reductions in latency across equipment, networking, and underlying services, Lambda and serverless services benefit from those gains. There's considerable constant effort internally on focusing on performance at every level. And at the scale we operate at, with trillions of invocations every month in Lambda, very small regular improvements can make a very dramatic difference. Concurrency is another factor, and it's one of the biggest benefits of using Lambda because of the speed at which it can scale up when traffic arrives. All execution models, whether you use synchronous, asynchronous, or polling, offer this. And for apps with very heavy traffic, this means that your apps can keep up with that demand. Now, for apps with intensive processing, such as image manipulation or data processing, this is where parallelization can make a really huge difference. Now, in the last year, we've announced major changes to the way that Lambda networking happens, which has reduced the cold start impact for customers who are running Lambda functions inside VPCs to almost be comparable with Lambda functions that don't run in VPCs. And we also announced provision concurrency. This is a fairly new Lambda feature that enables you to prepare execution environments ahead of when you need them. So when the invocations arrive, the execution environments have already been prepared, and so that's the easiest way to minimize latency in very latency sensitive applications. The fourth factor is cost. Financial engines said that they projected a 94% saving in hard costs of around $110,000 annually, and that didn't include the cost savings in operational maintenance. And this was all as a result of going serverless for their workloads. And so driving down cost is a big factor of why enterprises choose serverless. And cost is a huge consideration for organizations of all sizes, but it's especially important at the enterprise IT level. Many customers have hundreds of millions of dollars of IT investment, and they're looking for ways to lower those costs and to improve their return on investment. Now, you've probably heard at AWS and Amazon, frugality is one of our leadership principles. So we believe very, very strongly in driving down costs and passing on those savings to our customers. So if you look at the total cost of ownership of an application, it's an interesting way to compare serverless workloads with server-based equivalents. In many companies, you find this duplication of functions. You have networking teams, security teams, and operations teams, and you have to factor in the cost of that for your server-based apps. Now, you're getting all of the expertise of thousands of AWS developers in a pay-per-value model with Lambda. So there's significant value in the infrastructure management in the Lambda and serverless model. Scale is another thing to think about. When you look at EC2-based applications or any type of instance-based application, many of our studies show that customers typically don't use all of the CPU available. Often we see that only 10 to 20% of the resources of that instance are really being used in the workload. And this is especially true when you look at duplication caused by high availability or disaster recovery. Then there are savings plans for Lambda as well. This was announced fairly recently, so customers who have compute savings plans can now apply these to Lambda, providing an additional up to 17% savings. So organizations with existing savings plans can move those to Lambda from EC2 and benefit from those major savings. And there are specific cost reductions too. We have periodic price reductions that are part of our normal part of doing business. We've actually had 80 of them since the inception of AWS. And we continue to lower prices this year, and we hope for many years to come. Our pricing philosophy is actually very simple. We work relentlessly to take the cost out of our own cost structure, and we pass on those savings back to our customers in the form of lower prices. Some of the examples you've seen in recent serverless services include things like step functions express workflows or HTTP APIs, which are up to 71% cheaper compared to the REST API equivalent on API Gateway. The fifth reason we hear about is security. Now, I don't need to tell anyone today in this call how important security is. Security is our top priority, and it's job number one at AWS. But all of us have a role to play in security in our workloads and our applications. And serverless has a number of mechanisms that can help make this easier. First, there's the shared responsibility model at AWS. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, and our customers are responsible for the security in the cloud. Now, there are benefits to having AWS manage the underlying hardware in serverless services. For example, when the Spectre and Meltdown security vulnerabilities were announced, we were able to patch the entire EC2 fleet behind Lambda before these even were announced publicly. You also want to think about minimizing the blast radius. Now you have very granular permissions via IAM in serverless applications for every resource, service, and function in your app. We also offer deep integration with Cognito through AWS services, and that's really the bedrock of serverless security. You can easily wrap up a Lambda function with a very strong security posture using IAM to maintain a high level of security and auditing to meet your compliance needs. And you can minimize the blast radius at each and every step of the services in your application. Serverless security is not the perimeter level security and protection that we've seen in so many server-based application stacks over the years. Now, development tools are really important here too, because a critical part of making applications secure is bringing developers into the security process. And when you look at frameworks such as SAM, the serverless application model, that makes it very easy for developers to specify access policies for their functions using YAML. SAM also provides managed policies too, so for common types of security in your application, you can use those managed policies, and that can help avoid errors when manually trying to enter them in your code. And there's the well-architected tool as well. So fairly recently, we also announced the Serverless Lens here. This is a free-to-use tool for serverless workloads, and it also provides guidance for best operational practices, as well as cost management and performance, in addition to security. So those are the reasons why, but it doesn't stop there. We have worked to produce a suite of features and tools designed specifically for enterprise developers in mind. Now, first, we're making it easier to integrate with other systems and data. And second, we've created a complete suite of enterprise tools for developers. So when you look at this suite of enterprise tools, one of the services that really stands out is X-Ray. You can provide observability for your application using this service. It's a distributed tracing technology that enables you to follow a request path through the different layers of your application to identify issues. It lets you analyze and debug throughout your distributed architecture. And this works for anything from simple synchronous calls to N-tier web applications, all the way up to very complex microservices consisting of thousands of different services. And then we have integration with popular IDEs. Now you may have seen Cloud9, which is our cloud-based IDE, which makes it simple to run and debug serverless applications within a browser in the cloud. But there's also toolkits for PyCharm and IntelliJ, and also extensions available for VS Code, which is very popular with our customers. And then for enterprise workflows that are extremely complex, there's step functions. And step functions is an amazing tool that lets you take those workflows, break them up into a visual flow of what happens, and then build state machines that represent that flow to minimize custom code within your application. And they can also simplify error handling and retry logic too. And one of the services I'm really excited about is EventBridge. This came out last year, and this is a serverless event bus service. But it has some really interesting features that many people aren't aware of, such as schema registry. So if you have an event-based architecture with many services all around your application emitting events, often keeping track of these schemas can be very difficult because different developers use different formats. So schema discovery lets you automate that process. It can watch schemas going through your application and build a schema registry for you. And from there, you can download code bindings directly into your IDE. So you can instantiate classes in type-safe languages directly from events. And again, this helps accelerate development and really help reduce errors from manual copying and pasting. So since its creation 5 years ago, Lambda has become one of the fastest growing services here at AWS. This is largely thanks to how enterprises have seen what it can do, and they've adopted this approach for some of their most difficult and demanding workloads. Now, whether it's Airbnb, National Geographic, Dunelm, or Expedia, these enterprises are looking for the best tools and the services most suited for their workloads and their developer teams. So in the 5 reasons why, time to market is cited again and again as the most critical benefit that serverless can bring. But enterprises have also found that they're better off freeing their developers to work on features that help drive the disruptive agility that's needed in modern software development. They've also found that for many of their applications, serverless is the best choice for achieving availability and performance, while also controlling cost and implementing a strong security posture. Now, when you add all these things together, along with the rich set of tools and capabilities that we have available today, this is why so many companies are choosing to develop with a serverless first approach. And it's quickly becoming the case that serverless is not just where you build, but serverless is how you build. Thank you very much for your time today. My name is James Beswick. I'm a developer advocate with the AWS Serverless team. It's truly an honor to have been keynoting this event with you. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me via email or Twitter anytime, and I'll be happy to help. I hope you have a great rest of your day here at Serverless Days Warsaw.